I will now never, ever get too excited until there is a contract.
The other day, someone messaged me and sent me a picture of some part of my video on an ad in Spitalfield Market, like on a big screen. They didn't even tell me, so I didn't even know.
You, like, babes, you are massively undercharging. What are you doing? And I just got an email like, hey, we love your content. Do you want to create something for Photoshop? And I remember being like, no way.
They're always going to probably negotiate you down.
Oh, 100%. Am I an influencer or a creator? And does this brand really connect? I'm Daisy.
I'm Katie.
And welcome to Visionaries in Progress.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm an esthetician and skincare educator.
And I'm Daisy. I'm the founder of The Selfhood, which is a content studio and online community.
So I feel like as we're both freelancers, we work for ourselves, brand partnerships are such a big part of like a revenue stream and getting yourself out there. Do you remember like your first brand partnership?
Yeah, I do. It was a few years ago actually. I've been creating content for a while and I didn't really know what like brand partnerships were. I didn't realise that you could get paid to create content for brands, which is so funny because now I help other creators do that, and it's become, I think it's always been quite a lucrative industry, but like especially recently it's really blown up. But I remember getting the message and being like, me? You want to pay me for my content? What the hell? And it was actually for Adobe Photoshop.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen you work with them a few times.
Yeah, I'm now an ambassador, which is really cool. So I'm in their insiders program. But it felt really special because I've always created my content with Adobe.
Yeah.
And I've been using them for like, oh my gosh, like 17 years. I remember using them at college and they're a massive part of my content creation process. And I just got an email like, hey, we love your content. Do you want to create something for Photoshop? And I remember being like, no way. And yeah, it was really cool. And it was at that point that I realised, oh my gosh, you can actually monetize your content. Yeah. But yeah, it was with a brand that felt really aligned and really just connected to the work that I was doing anyway. And it was just, I just remember like feeling this real sense of pride, like, oh yeah, that's so cool.
It's such an incredible brand, like such a globally well-known brand as well. It's like incredible.
I remember my mum knows nothing about social media. She'll probably watch this and be like, Days, what do you mean? But she knows nothing about, and I remember telling my mum and her being like, oh my God, Photoshop. Like, so yeah,
everyone's heard of Photoshop, right?
Yeah, so that was really cool. But yeah, that was my first ever sponsored reel a couple of years ago. What about you? What was your first ever?
So I only went freelance last May. So before that, when I was like employed by a brand, I would do a few little like social media reels and stuff on the side. But I would say my first big one from going freelance was literally, I went freelance in the May, went on holiday with the girls, and whilst I was on holiday I had an email from this like production company that we're working with, Perfectil, the supplement, and they were like, oh, we would love you to do a campaign with Frankie Bridge, who was the ambassador at the time.
This.
Where you come in because as an esthetician and you debunk skincare myths as part of like a wider campaign. So it was going on their website and on their social media. And I just remember being on holiday with the girls like, this is nuts. Like, this is my first like proper big partnership since going freelance.
Yeah.
And I literally got back from holiday and it was like 2 days after I got back. So I had to do all the prep whilst I was away.
I remember this.
It was incredible.
Katie took the leap to go freelance, like so bold, like so quickly. I feel like you were just like, I'm thinking about it, and then you just like made this decision. But I remember being like, go on,
it was like
you got so many partnerships so quickly. But I think that's a testament to how great your content is.
Oh, thank you. I do think like people always ask like, oh, what is the secret to getting brand partnerships? And like I fortunately so far haven't had to do too much outreach, but I think it's because a lot of brands I just talk about organically in my content, and I'm always online and like meeting people. So I feel like if you're out there, it kind of puts you on people's radar.
100%. I actually think that's a really good tip, is if you're looking for brand partnerships, organically tag the brands that you like anyway. Because I used to reference Adobe in all my workshops, and when people would say like, oh, where do you design your content? I'd always plug them anyway because I was proud of the brand and like they were a natural part of my process. But I think that's a really good tip, is to actually just organically tag brands in the first place.
Definitely, because you're going to get more from them if they can see you authentically and organically talking about the brand. And also it's better for your community, because I don't know about you, but when I'm choosing, if people do approach me, if it's someone that I've never worked with before, never even mentioned before, I always say sort of like, I want to test out the product or do some things like organically first.
I think that's really important, is transparency with brand partnerships, isn't it? Were you nervous for your first one?
Yeah, I was so nervous, but it went really well. And I think every time you do something like that, you get more confident. So yeah, it was good. Yeah. It's been a good start, really.
It's been a great start.
Yeah.
For you. How long have you been freelancing for now?
So, yeah, that was May. So, well, we're March
even a
now.
year.
No, so 2 months and it'll be a year.
Very impressive.
But you were also so helpful. Like, I think also when you're going freelance and like starting working with brands, having like a network around you of people that have done it before and you can like get advice from them, and it just helps to build your confidence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you were such a massive help to me. So.
Oh, thank you. I also think just like transparency over what to charge is a big thing as well. I think it's 7/6 agency. They do a report every year where they release the numbers on like the average cost for certain deliverables, and it's really nice to have resources like that, but also just asking other creators, because I remember like I was quoting brands for various partnerships, and then I didn't really know what the going rate was. Sometimes they'd just come with a budget and I'd just be like, I'm just so flattered you've asked. Yeah, cool, let's go for it. And then I remember speaking to friends who were doing it and they were like, you, like, babes, you are massively undercharging. What are you doing? So I think like someone actually said, I've got a WhatsApp group for creatives yesterday, and pricing actually came up. And someone was saying they were really struggling with pricing. And someone was like, they referenced Cindy Gallop, who's an amazing woman who does a lot of work for women in business and equality, and she quoted her, and Cindy Gallop said, quote them the biggest number you can say out loud without laughing, which I love.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I know, I love it. I mean, I'm yet to do that. Yeah. But I think like there's always room to negotiate.
Yeah, they're always going to probably negotiate you down.
Oh, 100%.
I've always been told that if you go in with a rate and they immediately accept it, you've gone too low.
Yeah, I literally had that happen to me last week.
Really?
Yeah, literally last week. I was asked to do a filming content job, and I thought it was like, I was like, oh God, like a bit ballsy. And they came back like, yep, we can work with that. And I was like,
damn, you could have gone higher.
My God. So I think like you're right. That's really good advice. Go in higher, and then if they negotiate you down, which I think 9 times out of 10 they will try and do, at least you've got some wiggle room. And also you do have to take into account, it's not just the deliverables, it's not just your time, it's the community that they're accessing, which you've spent years often building. And also like national insurance, tax, like when you take away all your tax deductions, like what does that actually leave you with?
Yeah, I definitely have. When I first went freelance, I wasn't accounting for the fact that I had to put away 20% for tax. Yeah. So I just added 20% to my rates to account for the fact that I'm not actually taking home what I'm getting. So I think that's a really good tip, because you don't think about it like, you just think, oh, I'm getting that money, but you're not, because the taxman is getting some of that. So.
Yeah, HMRC come knocking at your door.
Yeah, I'm about to increase my rates in April 20% because I just feel like that's the time to do it.
Tis the season. Tis the season. And there's budgets out there. Like, you just have to be a bit ballsy, I think. So yeah,
you do.
Up your rates in April.
And don't, if they immediately take the rate, you've gone too low.
Yeah. But also like that, and ask other people and look for industry resources like the 7/6 report.
Yeah, that is really good. And they had, they do some workshops. I went on one of their workshops where it was about negotiating brand deals and fees, and they were saying that sometimes maybe you can negotiate on the deliverables if they don't want to move on the fee. Yeah. So you can say, okay, well, I'm not willing to do it for XYZ, so how about I'll do one less video or whatever that looks like, whatever the partnership is. So maybe that's a good way to negotiate.
Definitely.
Without sort of.
Also, you said something earlier, I've just had a thought. You mentioned that it was a production agency that reached out to you. I often get agencies reach out. So if you're active on LinkedIn and you're looking to get brand partnerships, definitely connect with talent managers. Like Caller is one of them, Ketchum. Like go and look at the agencies that are working with these brands, and there's some more independent, smaller ones. Connect with them and start sharing your work, because quite often the brands actually hire agencies. A lot of my work comes through agencies, actually. Definitely.
I also think, I said this at an event I was speaking at the other day, that if you're especially if you work in an industry that doesn't feel very corporate, for want of a better word, like for example, I'm an esthetician by background, so the skincare world isn't necessarily very corporate outside of working for the big conglomerates. So I think sometimes it puts people off like using LinkedIn because they think it's just for like the finance bros. Yeah. But honestly, like as soon as I started sharing my achievements, like sharing jobs that I'd done and like pictures and whatever and tagging the brands, I would get more jobs, because all the people that are signing off those jobs and like handling the budgets are in those offices, they're on LinkedIn. So it's like you kind of have to be in that space. And I know you've been like so visible on LinkedIn the past like few months, haven't you? You've been like really focusing on it.
I think it's great. I think it's great for connection building. And sometimes the feedback I get is like exactly as you said, like, oh, I work in creative industry, I'm not sure it's right for me. There's loads of people. There's an illustrator I follow, Tegan Price, and she's really active on LinkedIn. She works with massive brands like Nike. God, I can't remember the other ones, but she's got some amazing big brands, and she's really active on LinkedIn. So you're so right. A lot of the decision makers aren't necessarily as active on Instagram, or they are, but they're also really active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I don't see many creators sharing their work on LinkedIn.
No, but I think that's like the perfect place to share it, because also then, you know, Instagram, loads of people are sharing what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas on LinkedIn, I feel like there's that space, so it's more likely to be noticed, because between, you know, people saying, oh, I've just started this job here, but oh, this is actually really interesting, some sort of creative job, so you're more likely to capture people's attention, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
What's next?
This is a good one. So brand partnerships aren't just about finding a brand, it's about finding the right brand. What's your process for deciding which companies to approach and making sure it's a good fit?
I mean, as I said earlier, I typically focus on brands that I've just mentioned organically that I use already. I guess it's quite unique in that I work in skincare, so I suppose it's something that's sort of attributed to my day-to-day. So that's kind of how I end up working with brands, is people that I already mentioned. But if I've seen a brand that I feel like, oh, this is something that my community would like, or a brand that aligns with my values, then I'll reach out. But I think you have to have some discernment, because you've got to think about yourself as a brand. Yeah. And I think if you're just here, there and everywhere, sometimes it can dilute your brand. Or even if it doesn't work for you necessarily, like for me personally, for example, I don't have dry skin, so I don't use dry skin products, but I know that a lot of my followers do. So then I might want to work with a brand because my followers would benefit from me working with them, if that makes sense. So it's like a bit of thinking about who you want to work with in terms of who aligns with you, but then also who would be interesting to your community. What about you?
Yeah, I think like everything you've just said is bang on, but also like from a values perspective, I always try and do due diligence on the brand, look at what other creators they're working with, and just make sure that their brand is a good representation of who I am, because I do think the brands that you work with and associate with become an extension of you. And just making sure that they've got solid values, and also that there's going to be some benefit to my community. I think it's really interesting to note the difference between an influencer and a creator. And like a traditional influencer, their whole job is monetization of brand ads. And people are saying, and I'm definitely seeing it, like the role of the traditional influencer is dying out, because people are losing trust in someone that's just being paid to promote loads of products. So I think people can see through it. Whereas a creator is someone who has a hobby that they build a community around, and then they may well get some brand partnerships off the back of that, but it's not their whole revenue stream. So people are opting more for creators because they're more niche, they're more trustworthy. So I think it's about really like defining the difference between, am I an influencer or a creator, and does this brand really connect? And also, I've said no to quite a lot recently, and I think there's real power in saying no. And quite often, like I've gone to say yes to things, and I'm like, this is coming from a scarcity mindset, because maybe I feel like I need the cash that month, or it could be an opportunity for something bigger, but always trust your gut. And if you're not really excited about it, and if you think, oh, I'm not sure if this is going to be a good fit in my community, it's probably a no. And I do really believe that when one door closes and you say no to things, another one will always open.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to do that when it's like, but it's really well paid, and like it's a good opportunity, but if it doesn't feel connected to you and if it doesn't feel right, just say no.
No, I think that is really important, because it's more thinking about the long term, because it could damage your brand, or it's just you're just spending time on the wrong things. Like I feel like this is completely like a different example, but for example, Beyonce, right? She's got her brand, but you don't see her working with everybody.
No.
So we should all be like Beyonce.
Be more Beyonce.
Be more Beyonce.
That is the mantra.
But I think, like all these people could have access to all the brands in the world, right? But they're choosy for a reason. So I think it's important to do the same.
I agree. It's about integrity, isn't it? And like you say, like you need to treat yourself like a brand as well.
Exactly. So I suppose part of like brand partnerships and just being an entrepreneur is like dealing with rejection, which we all do in many ways.
Happens all the time.
Can you share a time when a brand said no and how you handled that?
I'm also really fortunate. I've pitched myself once to a brand, which I'll talk about a bit later on, but like otherwise it's mainly been inbound, which I feel really, really lucky for. I am such an advocate for pitching, by the way. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and it's actually on my radar to do more this year, is to actually reach out to brands, because if they don't know you exist, they don't know you exist. So it's not been for any other reason than I just haven't really thought about it or had
Yeah.
time. But there was one brand that approached me. It was actually Instagram, and it was a couple of years ago to take part in this creator-led campaign that they were doing. It was just before Christmas, and I remember getting so excited about it, and felt really aligned, really connected. I'd really built most of my community is not so much anymore, but at the time most of my community were on Instagram.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, this feels like really, really great, really, on brand for selfhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it all went really well. Had a call with this production agency in the US. It was like pretty much name on dotted line. And then they came back just after Christmas and they were like, we're really sorry, but we're taking a different route. We want to work with creators, not just in the creative industry. And there's too many similar creators. Brief has changed slightly. And I remember being so gutted because, when you're like, it's mine, I've got it. Yeah,
and you're so excited. Had you got to the contract stage or no?
No, but it was like we'd had multiple calls, dates locked in, due to sign contract, came back from Christmas. But I think it really taught me that nothing is personal.
No.
And sometimes things just don't work out. And also, in my head, I'd really mentally banked that I will now never, ever get too excited until there is a contract. Yeah. And name on a dotted line. Because I've done that a few times where I've been like, not just with content opportunities, just like opportunities in general. And I will never bank on anything. I'll never when I'm running my finances, put I'll have a warm lead section.
Yes,
now,
I do that,
rather than adding it all and thinking, I've made this much this month. I got over it quite quickly because I was just kind of do you know what? It's not personal. It's a different route. It's out of my control. There's no point wasting time on feeling down about something.
You can't. What can you do?
Yeah. Yeah. But that one stings. But funnily enough, the following year they booked me to do a talk.
Oh,
and
amazing.
That felt actually more aligned to what they wanted me to do. It's all about community. I have a really nice relationship with them now. And it just came about in a different way. Yeah. So, it
worked out well long term.
Yeah. But I think rejection, like you say, it's a massive part of the process.
Definitely. It definitely is. And also just a slight tangent, but what you said about the contracts, I think it's really important, especially if you're new to the world of brand partnerships, make sure you get a contract, because I've done a few things when I was freshly freelance where there wasn't a contract, and I just didn't think, because they didn't mention it. I don't know why, I just didn't think about it. Yeah. And then now I wish I had, because of usage stuff. But now if a brand doesn't say to you, we're going to send over a contract, ask for it, or send over your own, create your own contract. You can just do it on ChatGPT.
Definitely.
Just use a template, because you just want to cover yourself, especially for usage, because brands can end up just using your stuff everywhere, and then you haven't been paid for it. So
that's a really good point. I didn't know anything about usage until a couple of years ago. I guess just for anyone who is interested in brand partnerships and isn't, do you want to explain what usage is?
So it's essentially how the brand can use your content. So just say it's a content. Just say that they've paid you to film a reel for Instagram. You might have just agreed to have them use your video on their page organically, but then they could also use it for ads, for sponsored ads. They could use it in email marketing. They could use it, YouTube. And all of that comes with
extra fees.
Well, you should be charging more the more that they want to use it, especially if it's paid ads. If a brand is asking you for content, always ask if they're going to use it in paid ads, because they're making money from your content, and you should be getting kickback from that. But it's really hard to know how to price it, so I can only advise based on Instagram. What I've been doing is, for every month paid usage for Instagram ads, I charge 30% of the deliverable fee if it was organically.
Really good. That's a good way to model it, yeah.
So that's how I just do it. But then some people do it they ask them how much spend they're putting behind, and then they do 30% of the spend.
Interesting.
So I don't know, it's really varied, so you kind of have to just decide which way you want to go. I don't know, do you have any advice on that?
I mean, it depends on the fee. I just kind of wing it, but I'm actually going to steal that model because I think that's way better, and I'm I've been massively undercharged.
Yeah, that's a ballpark, I think.
Yeah, but no, I will be stealing that moving forward.
Yeah, no,
but sometimes they'll come to you, I've had brands come to me and say it's X amount for deliverables, X amount for usage. Yeah. And I'm just kind of that's fine. Yeah. So that is a really good point. It should always be
a contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I did this was actually an unpaid job that I did last year, so that's why I think I didn't think about the contract. And it was just something I thought it was really good exposure. Yeah. And it was, I don't mind actually saying it was, and it was 2 videos for their YouTube, and I did it unpaid. and I'd asked for budget, and they, like, if they had budget, they didn't. But I was like, do you know what? It's a really good opportunity.
They have got
you know,
huge reach,
and it was just when I'd just gone freelance, so I didn't do a contract, and it was just for YouTube. And then the other day, someone messaged me and sent me a picture of some part of my video on an ad in Spitalfield Market, like on a big screen. And they didn't even tell me, so I didn't even know that it was happening.
Oh my God.
So yeah,
that's awful.
I wish that I'd had a contract, so that at least I could have gone back and said, oh, you know,
give me money.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't paid in to begin with, but that's a perfect example of why you have to have a contract, so that you've got clear usage. And really, they should have let me know and given me a heads up. And I spoke to them, and they were like really apologetic. Yeah. And I think it was just part of like a wider advert for their YouTube. Yeah. So, you know, it's not a big deal, but it's just a classic example of why you need...
And a good lesson to learn.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with rejection? Is there one in particular that has really stung?
There's definitely been brands like when they've reached out and they've wanted to do content, and then I've said my rates, and then they've said, no, we can't do that rate. Can you do X, Y, Z? And then I've just said no.
That's great. Well done.
Or they've said no because my rate is too high. But I just take it as, do you know what? There's only so much I'm willing to compromise.
Yeah.
And so if it's not working for them, then it's not working for me, basically. Yeah. But there's definitely, I'm trying to think, I can't think off the top of my head of like one that really like hurt. But there definitely has been. But I think I just think, okay, well, it wasn't meant to be. So, and
that's the best attitude to have, isn't it? It's like it will come back around.
Yeah,
way.
Exactly.
And it puts you on their radar as well. Like, even if it's, someone said to me once, it's not a no, it's a not right now.
Exactly. I mean, it's not brand partnerships, but a perfect example of rejection that did really sting was when I was employed. I worked at Skinrocks, and many years before I worked at Skinrocks, I applied for a job with Caroline Hirons, and I think it was like social media or something. And I got to the very end of the interview stage, but they ended up going with someone else. And I remember I cried that I didn't get it because I really wanted it. Yeah. And they were so lovely. Like, they sent me a gift to say, like, thank you for like doing the process. Really nice. And they called me and said, we're going to keep in touch because we think you'd be better suited elsewhere in the business. And, you know, and you just think, oh, they're never going to come back round. And then 2 years later, they reached out to me for another role. And that was my last role before I left to go freelance. I was there for 3.5 years, and it was actually a much better role for me. Yeah. And I was a lot happier. So, like, it does work out. Obviously, in the moment, you're just, like, gutted. Yeah. But I do really think, like, what is for you won't pass you by as long as you're just putting yourself out there. So, yeah. Like, it's not brand partnerships, but it's still rejection.
Yeah, and like you say, sometimes it comes back around, and often in better
ways. Yeah, like your thing with Instagram. So
yeah, true. Looking at all the brands you've worked with, what's been one of the most fulfilling moments, and how has it shaped the way you approach future collaborations?
Do you know what I would say? My Biosense partnership was really fulfilling because a lot of the partnerships that I'd done prior to that were like social media partnerships, which are great, but because I'm an esthetician, I love in-person education and like treatments as a facialist. So that was amazing because I got to go on their like influencer trip and provide facials to influencers with their new products. So it was really lovely. Like, they were such a nice brand to work with, and they were really easy to work with. And it was just doing something that I really loved in like a different way as well. Because before that, I'd never thought of offering my facials as part of a brand partnership to support a brand event. Yeah. And now that's led to other things that have been similar. So yeah, that's
amazing. How did that come about? Was that through your content or?
Yeah, I think the PR because Look Fantastic were looking after the like event, but it was for Biosense because they're sold on there. And the PR for Look Fantastic just reached out to me. I don't know how she found me. I think it's just by being online. Yeah. And like just people tagging people and stuff. And she just emailed me. And then it was just, I think the main thing is just when people reach out to you, being really easy to work with, like being responsive. I mean, you know, just being a nice person. But I think that makes people more likely to work with you as well if like you're making it easy for them.
Yeah, definitely.
What about you?
Completely agree. Probably my big standout moment was I pitched myself for a talk with Apple. I
remember this.
Yeah, it was a really special moment. I remember being at uni, and they were one of our like professional development tasks was to think about all the brands we'd love to work with one day. And I remember Apple being at the top just because I'd used their technology for years and years, and just really like always liked the brand. And then back to your point actually about just being nice and being easy to work with, I'd worked with the cultural programmer at Apple before on 2 different projects for Soho House and Lost Village Festival. And then when she moved to Apple, stayed in touch, sent her a copy of my book and just said like, oh, I'd love to meet up and like chat and see how you are. I've actually had an idea for an event. Went to Apple head office with her and somebody else, and I just put like a presentation together, 3 different ideas, and then we took over their flagship store and did an International Women's Day panel talk with women from my community.
That's so lovely.
And the feedback was amazing. Like, it was like a co-creation between myself and Apple, and it was perfect mix of panel talk. I did a little like workshop, and then we did a creative workshop, and then networking, and that was the most fulfilling, I think, because it was something I'd wanted to do for ages. I got my community involved. Feedback from her was great. She said it was one of her favourite events, but also the community who joined, people connected afterwards.
Yeah.
And I've seen people since, and they were like, oh, I met so and so from your Apple event, and that's what like in my work feels really fulfilling. But I think that really taught me about the power of pitching. There's a really amazing person to follow called Kyra Matthews.
I'm gonna follow.
She is like amazing at pitching. She actually has a course called Pitch School, and she's such an advocate for. She's got like loads of amazing brand partnerships, and she's always like, just pitch yourself. That's the first and only time that I've done it. But I think I said at the beginning, it's massively on my radar for this year, because brands want to tap into communities. I think it's much harder for brands nowadays to build niche and refine like and highly engaged communities than creators can, because they're more human, they're more real.
Absolutely.
It's easier to create that dialogue. So I think brands are looking for it, and not even on massive scales. Like, there are people who do what I do with like 4 times, 5 times, 10 times the following that I have. I don't have a massive following, but I feel really proud that I've worked with some really great brands, as have you. And yeah, I've got massive online following.
It's not all about followers.
It's not.
Like, I'll happily, I have, I think 5.5 thousand followers. So it's like nothing. Like, it's very small.
It is, but it's
like,
very
as in
engaged.
in terms of if you were like looking at like the people that have got like 100k, it's very small. But like you said, like, I've been able to work with brands that I've seen people that have a much larger following not being able to work with, and it's just about engaging and fostering a community. It's not really about how many people you have, right?
And also, I think it's like how much you actually care, because a lot of the time, actually no, not a lot of the time, but sometimes I see big creators and they're not putting as much time and energy into their partnerships because they get so many, which is like fair enough. But I think small creators are often put more into their content. Not always. That's not fair to say, but there is. My point is, there's a big benefit to being small. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, like Kyra, for example, who does Pitch School, I think she's got under 10k, but she's got amazing brand partnerships under her belt, and I'm seeing more and more smaller creators with smaller communities do really well. So that was a lesson for me, that I used to always think like, I need like 50k before I even think about, and it's like, not at all.
No,
not at all.
I feel like I've seen you speak about this before, and I saw someone post about it the other day about the comfort creator. This girl said something about Julia Broom, that was it, on Instagram, and she was saying how more and more people are kind of rejecting that like glossy, life is perfect, look at all my achievements, look at all this money I've made, look at all these designer items, holidays I go on. Yeah. Because it feels so detached from like a lot of people's day to day. Yeah. So I think just being, and it's not about not speaking about your achievements, because as we said earlier, it's important to like speak about your achievements, but also just being relatable and human goes a long way. Yeah, massively. I just think like, I love the phrase, the comfort creator. I spoke about that early last year, and I think it's grown and grown. And it's the idea of like a creator that makes you feel seen. Like, I will often share my rejections and stuff that doesn't go right. And I always love when I see, especially like women in business who I really admire, when they talk about the stuff that's gone wrong. I'm always like, I'm so grateful, because it makes you feel like, you're not doing a bad job. Yeah. And I think everyone's craving that. And I think socials are changing anyway. I think people are just craving more like real content. Yeah, definitely. And the whole like glossy influencer thing, I said it at the beginning, like the traditional influencer is a dying breed. But yeah, I think it's really refreshing for just honest and real and raw content. It is. So someone I always like think about in terms of who I think's done that really well is Melissa's wardrobe, because I feel like on her grid, if you just looked at her grid, it's very aesthetic, very polished. Obviously, it shows off her like styling and her work like that, but her stories is where she's really built a community, and she's just so, it's like you're just like one of her friends and you're on FaceTime. Like her stories are just like that, and I feel like that's where she's built her community, where people have shared her stories with others, and be like, oh, like, this girl's really funny, or what she's saying is so like relatable, and then that's what's led to brand partnerships. Because brands want to tap into the fact that she's built such a strong community, and that's just by her just being herself on her stories.
So
pretty much.
True. I think Candice Braithwaite is
so good.
Good at that. Like, it's, you can just see that with her, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And she's so herself. She doesn't dilute herself for anybody. And I think that's like, I always say like social media is like real life. Like people, your magnetism in person when you're just yourself, like people are drawn to that. They'll be the same on the internet. Like, don't feel like you have to be a certain way or act a certain way or like tone it down. Like, there's nothing more empowering. I always say when someone is completely themselves, they give people permission to be the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a really like comforting trait to have in somebody.
Definitely. And don't you find, I was thinking about this the other day, with your like brand partnerships versus your organic content, like sometimes a piece of content that's organic that you've literally spent like 5 minutes on will do like incredibly, and then you'll do like a brand partnership where you've like really thought about it and really gone into the nitty gritty, and then it doesn't do as well. And I just keep thinking to myself, okay, whenever I do a brand partnership, I just need to treat it like an organic piece of content. Obviously some brands are really, they're really like strict with their brief, and I think that's actually goes against it's just not going to do as well when they're really like, you have to do say XYZ.
I think that's really important, like and a really good point. I work with creators as part of Selfhood's offer, and we often help them with their brand content, and sometimes we get a script through, and I always say like we need to push back, and if there's certain phrases or like words, or if you need to reference a certain ingredient in a product, for example, you can negotiate that and put it in the caption, because reading like this supplement contains blah blah blah, that may not feel natural to you, and it might not be right for the creator. So I also think like always try and push back. I've had briefs before where I've been like, I would never do that, and I would never say that, and I've gone back and said, I'm going to be really honest, this doesn't feel aligned, would you be open to XYZ instead? And most of the time they're happy to find and meet a middle ground. So don't feel like you can't, if you open a brief and think, oh my gosh, that is so far removed from what I would ever create, always like they're working with you because they like your personality and what you do. And it's so much better for the brand for you to create a piece of content that you know your audience is going to resonate with, than to go completely off and just create something like really rigid and away from what you do. Because
it will land better when you inject a bit of 100%. Yourself. And also I think it's kind of helping the brands, like, because they're creating the brief, but it's fine for you to add your own sort of flex and like your own creativity to it, and it's going to help them
definitely
as well. So,
and also like they might be sending that to like 5, 10 more other creators. It benefits the brand for them to have a diversity of types of content. If everyone's coming back with the same scripted brief, then their content's all going to look the same. Yeah, exactly. No, it's so true. And also with contracts, you don't just have to take a contract at face value. Like when you're reading through it, if you like, I always add in, if it doesn't mention amends, I will add in like, this includes 1 round of amends, because otherwise you can be going back and forth. Oh my gosh, and then you might as well just end up filming another video. So like always add in, you can always go back when you get a contract to say, can we add in 1 round of amends? Can we change this wording so that, I don't know, there's something around like brands can have your content in perpetuity. You can change it so it's like you both have the ownership of the content, or you own the content. There's loads of things you can do, but like basically don't feel like when you get a contract through you have to just sign it and that's it. Like if there's something you want to change, you can push back and change it. Yeah, that's a really, really good shout actually. But I feel like they need to like teach people this in school though, because it's just something you learn as you go. Like it's quite hard to know how to do it all. You're just kind of making it up as you go along, but also picking things up along the way. And a lot of the terminology that's used in contracts, I remember reading them and being like, I feel really stupid that I don't know this, but why should you? No. So always just ask, or like run it through ChatGPT. Yeah, sometimes I copy and paste and like, can you just explain this to me like a dummy, please? This down. Because you're signing things and you don't even know like really what it means. Yeah. And then, you know, a year later something happened and you'll be like, oh. Yeah. They'll be like, you signed it, so. Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. It's a learning. It definitely is a learning. Yeah. I feel like this is my question, but I feel like we kind of covered it earlier in terms of negotiating brand deals and undervaluing yourself. What are some practical steps you take to determine your worth and confidently negotiate fair partnerships? Yeah, I think we did cover this, but just to recap, like knowledge of the industry, going rate, talk to other people about it. If you feel like this is going to take me ages, renegotiate the deliverables. That was a really good point you made. And then also just take into account the tax man is also going to get a cut off that.
Definitely. I saw something somewhere, and I think it depends on what industry you're in and what the deliverable is, but someone said if you're really like unsure, work out what, if you're like you're full-time self-employed, work out what you ideally would like to take home a year, and then work it out backwards, like to weekly, then by hour, and then times that by whatever to make your day rate. And think of it that way if you're really like, I have no idea. But there's so many reports out there now, which is sort of helpful.
Yeah,
in terms of setting a benchmark.
Point. I think like I got taken on my first ever brand trip last year to Barcelona, and I was away for 3 days, and I actually invoiced them a day rate for every time I was away, for every day I was away, because that takes me away from client work as well.
Yeah, that's so true. I hadn't thought of that. So it's not
just like, obviously it's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
But also like I had to reshuffle some of my my client stuff. That was 3 days out of the business that I could have been earning X amount. So even though it's really flattering and it's amazing, also bear in mind that it's your time.
Yeah.
So a good way to think of it is like, if content is taking you a day to create, plus edits, plus the liaison with the client, what's your day rate that you won't negotiate on as like a base? But then also like, it's not your time. Like we said, it's the content quality, it's the community that they'll access, it's the years that you've spent building a community. So also take into account your day rate as well.
Yeah, and also your experience. Like if you, depends obviously what field you're in. I can relate it to what I'm in, but as an esthetician versus maybe a beauty creator, I have years experience in terms of I've gone to beauty school, qualified, worked in salon, worked with other clients and stuff like that. So you're also charging for the expertise. Like you would pay more to see, I don't know, a doctor than someone works behind the boots counter. I don't know, it's a really terrible example, but do you know what I mean? Like,
makes total sense.
There's two different levels of expertise, so I think, charge accordingly. Yeah, it's not 100%. Just about like followers and community. It's also about your experience, your years under your belt. That's why some people can charge more than others. Yeah, and have less followers as well.
Totally, hard agree.
Well, I wanted to ask you with the charging your day rate whilst you're in Barcelona, because that's completely not, I've never even thought to do that in terms of if I've gone on like a trip. Like when I did that Biosense trip, it was 2 days because I stayed over, but I just charged them for like the job. So how did you go about, because they obviously approached you for this trip, how did you go about explaining, like getting them to pay you a day rate for whilst you were over there?
Just really transparent. I just went back and said, obviously I'm so flattered and I'm so excited about this, however I will have to move shoots and client work to accommodate, because I genuinely did. I had to make that time up at the weekend.
Of course.
And they were absolutely fine. They were really understanding.
That's good.
And they negotiated a bit,
fine.
which is like fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely, like all good. But yeah, I did charge a bit extra just to ensure that the time that I was there was also covered.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess, moving forward, maybe it's just like wrapping it up in the fee, the overall fee that you charge as well, isn't it? And
if they come back and say this is higher than usual, just explain.
Yeah.
I think like I'm really lucky that client is a long-term client and they really respect creatives and they know the creative industry inside out, and they're an amazing brand to work with. But some other clients might have been like, absolutely not. But it's worth asking.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's also like just on like rates and stuff. Some brand deals I've done for much less than I usually would. But if it's an opportunity that I'm excited by. Yeah. So sometimes, I have my ideal rate, but sometimes it's a bit less. Sometimes it's a bit more. I think it's up to you, like trust your gut on what feels good for you. Yeah, no, definitely. One tip I was given is don't publicise your rates. So when I first went freelance, I have like a pitch, like a deck where people can, and it's linked on my LinkedIn, on my Instagram, and I email it to people if they ask for like more information about my services. But there's no rates on my deck because it really depends on the client, and you might end up just shooting yourself in the foot because they would have paid you like double. So I just don't have my rates anywhere, and then obviously it depends, and it also depends on usage, and there's so many things. So I feel like you could say from XYZ if you wanted to, but I just don't publicise them on like any like decks, and then just wait to see who the client is and what the job is. Yeah, because like you say, like I remember one of my very first brand deals, I got on a call and they gave me the overall fee, and I was like, is that for the whole campaign? They were like, no, that's for you. And I was like, oh my god, I didn't realise brands had that kind of money.
Yeah.
And I would have gone so much lower.
Yeah,
so much
exactly.
lower. So sometimes, like, you don't know what budgets they've got to play with, and if you go in really low, then you're just, like you say, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
I feel like some brands will do it similar to like the job market, where they don't have the salary on jobs, which I feel like they've changed, I think, or they're changing in Europe, so that's like illegal, which it just bugs me, because if you're going for a job, and sometimes when you would be working in corporate, it'd be like 3 job interviews, and then you get to the end and you're like, this is not even sustainable for me to live on, so I'm not going to take the job anyway.
Just a waste of everyone's time.
But some brands will say to you, like, what's your fee, or how much is it going to cost, because they want to try and lowball you.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's actually better to ask them what their budget is, because it could be larger than what you would have charged. I mean, it's a minefield, isn't it? It's like...
It really is. It really is. It's tricky to navigate, but I do think more transparency and just asking people.
Definitely.
I think it's funny, isn't it? In the UK, like, we're so conservative about money.
Yeah.
And then you go to the States and everyone's like, what's your salary?
Yeah,
like, so open.
Yeah.
It's really important. Like, it is a bit sticky and it is a bit icky, but ultimately, like, when you're more transparent, you're helping other people as well. Like, if I ever refer my friends to a job and I've worked with a client before, I'll say, like, FYI, like, they've got budget, like, don't go in lower.
Definitely. And the more we talk about it, the less sticky it gets. And at the end of the day, we all need to earn money to live. Yeah. So, like, let's just be upfront and transparent. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does, great.
I also think, just final note, like, and I really, really, really want to reiterate this, is, like, do not let follower numbers get in the way of pitching. Like, it's not about the following all the time. It's about your credibility, your community, also just the quality of your content.
Absolutely. And just be a joy to work with, because a lot of the people that I've worked with, they've gone back and like, oh, you were such a joy, and then that's led to more work, even if they could have gone with someone new the next time. Brands, often want an easy, they don't want extra stress than they don't need. So if they can work with someone that just makes it really easy for them, you're on time, you're communicative, that is going to really help you. I think you have to just, if you're at events, be kind, be nice to people. Like London in particular, the world is very small. Everybody knows everyone. And I feel like often a lot of jobs you can get just through word of mouth. Yeah. But you just need to be really, like, cognizant of the fact that you might meet someone once, but they might end up at another brand and they're making the decision for, like, who's signing off budget. So just be good and kind to everyone.
Relationship building is really important. I've definitely found that, like, if I work with an agency and they move on, they might go on to book you again. So always be nice. And remember, like, you're there to make their life easier. Yeah, definitely. With all clients, like, even if it's a really annoying deadline or, like, a really annoying amend, it doesn't matter. Like, they're paying you at the end of the day. So obviously within reason. Yeah, within reason. But yeah, just be nice. And now with the world of social media, even more so, because there'll be receipts. Oh yeah, and then 100%. You don't want to end up on TikTok and everyone's talking about you. So yes, that part. So yeah, I feel like we've really. I feel like I've learned from you. I'm like 30% and likewise, used to be, and also charging a day rate when you're, like, being taken away. I've just never even thought about that. So lots to learn. Lots to learn.